Hi, welcome. I am so excited to kick off the Alpha Phi Keynote Speaker Series. I'm Amy Jordan, the co-chair of the Alumni Strategy Team, and I'll be your hostess and moderator for tonight's event. Today, it is my honor to introduce you to a woman who is not only shaking up the retail industry, but also helping millions of clients globally to choose self-confidence over self-consciousness each and every day. Lisa Sun is the founder and CEO of Gravitas, a revolutionary retail company with a global patent for building shapewear directly into dresses. 2 months after launching, Gravitas was featured in Oprah Magazine, People Magazine, and on the Today Show, all in the same month. The company hasn't slowed yet. It's been featured by Forbes, Fast Company, Elle, CNN, Marie Claire, InStyle, and more. Prior to launching Gravitas, Lisa spent 11 years at McKinsey & Company, advising the world's leading luxury brands on strategic and operational issues. Lisa graduated magna cum laude and Phi Beta Kappa from Yale University. And now, ladies, please join me in welcoming Lisa Sun.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Amy, and it's an honor to be your inaugural guest for this incredible series. I just want to say thank you to Carolyn and Bridget for just being wonderful partners and for putting all of this together, into the Alpha Phi Foundation for creating this opportunity. I am pretty humbled to speak before any audience, mostly because I grew up in Rancho Cucamonga, California. You can put in the chat, by the way, if you want to comment or say anything during the event. And we had a ticker tape parade the day we got a Walmart, a Price Club, and a Claim Jumper. So I always pinch myself whenever I get to share our story with this incredible group of people like yourselves. With the time I have today, I'm going to share 3 things. The first is a bit about my personal story. The second is what my team and I do. And the third is what we have learned about enabling human potential. So first, a little bit about me. I grew up in the company of entrepreneurs. My parents are the only 2 people to leave their families in Taiwan and come to America. It's a classic American story. My mom worked on a hamburger truck. My dad worked on a loading dock, and they saved up enough money to own restaurants, convenience stores, a scrap metal business. As you heard, I graduated from Yale, and I had taken the MCAT, the LSAT, the GMAT, and the GRE. My mom wanted me to be a lawyer. My dad wanted me to be a doctor, and I wanted to study Jane Austen for the rest of my life. I'd taken all these fancy tests, and my parents were in poor health. So my dad ended up saying, "You come work for me." So I worked in a scrap metal yard in Fontana, California, aprendiendo español. And my parents were able to retire. So I started my personal journey in the company of entrepreneurs and really appreciating what it takes to build something from nothing. From there, I went to McKinsey & Company, the global management consulting firm, where I spent 11 years. I know what you're thinking, and it is not just touch up my appearance on Zoom. Thank goodness for these Asian genetics, because 11 years is a long time to be a consultant. And being at McKinsey really gave me 2 gifts. The first is the power of client service, and that it is my job in life to help other people succeed. And the second gift was how important apprenticeship and mentorship is in your life. And I know this community understands that, because you really value this idea of sisterhood and mentorship. There are very few places in your 20s and 30s where you get a chance to sit with the world's leading executives and thinkers and accomplish impossible tasks in compressed timeframes. So I just really enjoyed being a consultant and being at this incredible organization for 11 years. Um, the last part of my story is I ended up taking a year off. I hit the pause button. I actually took a sabbatical from climbing the corporate ladder. And because I feel like with a group of women, I can share this. I got dumped by a really hot guy and realized I had no personal life. And so I ended up taking a year off, and I packed one little suitcase and 20 books. This was in 2011, 2012. So I still had a BlackBerry, but I didn't take any devices with me except for this BlackBerry. And I went around the world using up all the miles and points that I'd earned working for 11 years. On the last couple weeks of my year-long sabbatical, I ended up going to visit my parents in Taiwan. They're retired and they live there now. And I probably the last 2 weeks of this time off, I was having dinner with my mom, and I could just tell she had been sitting on something. She really didn't want to say anything, and I could just tell that she had pent up all these questions. And so we're at dinner together, and she says, "Lisa, you cannot live at home. Home is nice, but you must find job. You must go McKinsey. You go back." She sort of had all these questions about what I was going to do with my life. And this is the point of the story where I tell people, if there were a global pack of tiger moms, she would lead the annual parade and wave a flag, right? She thought Amy Chua's book was written about her. She said, "See, I was right. Someone write book about tiger mom. That's me." She would apply to win Tiger Mom of the Year award if you could. If you could apply for that, she would. But I had a couple months earlier been on a beach somewhere, and I had been reading Walter Isaacson's biography of Steve Jobs. And some of you may remember that Steve Jobs gave this incredible commencement address at Stanford where he talked about connecting the dots of your life. And it'll kind of tell this story that you never anticipated. And so I, on a napkin on a beach, had literally written the dots of my life. So I went and grabbed the napkin, and I showed my mom the napkin. She goes, "Napkin is not job. How much money you save?" I told her how much money I'd saved working for over a decade. And she said, "Oh, good. You bet on yourself. You start company." And my mom says things like this, and I don't really think about them too much. But the next morning, with the 12-hour time difference between New York and Taiwan, I had 10 emails in my inbox. My lawyer, "Your mom says you're starting a company. What's the name of the company? We have to get legal documents." My accountant, "Your mom says you're starting a company. Here's the tax ID paperwork." And there's sort of this ping-ponging around, "You can't spend your life savings starting a company," my business manager. And I went into the dining room, and my mom's sitting there eating her breakfast. And I said, "What did you do last night?" She said, "You'll not have guts. I have guts. I go on the internet. I start company last night." And that was October 12th, 2012. And I love to share a little bit about my personal history, because as we talk about self-confidence and belief, what you'll see in the through line through all of this is at every stage of my journey, there have been people who have really pushed my potential, whether it's growing up with entrepreneurs, being with the world's leading executives, or just having someone in your life who can really encourage you to live your purpose and have the guts to go pursue it. So what was on the napkin, right? What is it that we do? Now I'm going to show you what was on the napkin that I showed my mom. So when I was 22 years old, my first job at McKinsey, my first professional job, I had an annual review, and it was given to me by the first woman head of any McKinsey office. She's on the board of Facebook now, so she's a pretty big deal. And by the way, that is what I look like at 22. I really think companies should tell you that the photo you take on the first day is the one that you have for the rest of your time, because I probably would have, I look like 14 years old and I had a pimple. So, this is what I look like at 22 years old at McKinsey and Company. But the first line of my professional review was, "Lisa comes across as young and overly enthusiastic at times. She should seek to have more gravitas." By the way, I didn't know what the word meant. I had to go look it up. This was 2000. And I literally had to go open up a dictionary and look it up. And in the chat window, folks can mention what they think it means, because I did not know at 22. But it said dignity, importance, and depths of substance. And you can look at this photo. I didn't have any gravitas. Now, this is one of those stories where I think most women, or at least me, I think when we get feedback, we spiral. We're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my job. You know, I'm going to lose my job. Does this person like me? There's all these negative thoughts. And I literally didn't know what to do. I got this review and I just walked away. I was like, okay, thanks, right? And about a few days later, have you ever caught someone on their way to the bathroom and you're like, this is a good time and I need to stop somebody? Well, I saw the head of the office again, and I literally said to her, how do I get gravitas? And Nancy, my boss, said, you just go buy a new dress, wear big jewelry and great shoes. And she just kept walking. I was like, oh my gosh, what is happening here? She just told me to buy new clothes. I make $43,000 a year. And at the time I was a size 18, 20, and she's telling me my clothes matter. And so a few weeks later, I talked to her. I scheduled 15 minutes on her calendar. And I said, Nancy, do you really want me to go buy new clothes? And she said, no, no, no. What I'm telling you is when you wake up in the morning, you're the first person you have to see. And you have to like yourself. You actually have to give yourself a compliment. I can teach you how to be great at this job, but I can't teach you to like yourself. I can't teach you how to believe in yourself. So she said, for me, when I put on a dress, I look in the mirror and I like myself. And I'm able to take on the day knowing that I can do it. And I really always held on to that story, right? I mean, first of all, thank goodness I had a coach that was tough enough to tell me. I mean, I really think that your best coaches are the toughest because they care enough about you to tell you things like this. So I was really grateful. But then secondly, I always loved this idea of what are the catalysts for belief. You know, she actually mentioned to me, Dumbo had a flying feather. He never needed it, but it reminded him that he could fly. And so I decided that when my mom said, what's on this napkin and what are you going to do? I decided to start a company called Gravitas. And our mission is to catalyze confidence. Our first product, which is patented, is we built shapewear into clothes. So you didn't have to wear shapewear. Although who doesn't love a Spanx sometimes, although I haven't worn one in a long time, but we patented building shapewear into clothes so that as soon as you put on the garment, you got a confidence hug. This is actually our first photo shoot we ever did in 2013. And the idea is she looks beautiful on the left, and on the right with our patented innovation, you know, it just gives her a confidence hug, a boost to take on the day. Well, I always say you don't know what you've created until it takes on a life of its own. About 6 weeks after we launched the company, Oprah magazine gave us 2 full pages, pages 132 and 133 in their 2013 Favorite Things issue. By the way, they don't tell you that that's happening until 25 days before the issue hits newsstands. So we did not know. This is actually a photo from the day before we got the notice that we were in the Oprah magazine Favorite Things issue. We used to run the company from my 1-bedroom apartment in New York City. Susanna, I actually talked to her on Monday. She was our marketing director at the time. We didn't even have a seat for Susanna. She's sitting on the couch. But this happened and we sold out in a day. And it was this unbelievable thing that could happen for a young company that was 6 weeks old. We turned on the website in September, and then mid-October, this unbelievable thing happens. But it wasn't actually about the Oprah magazine moment for us. I always say you don't know what you've created until it takes on a life of its own. About a month to 2 months after this happened, we started to get phone calls and emails from people who had received products from us, who received these dresses from us. And by the way, I'm not the type of person who opens up my laptop and goes like, "Dear Nike, I love you." So I didn't really understand this idea of writing a love letter to a company. But about 2 months into this post-Oprah journey, we want to show you one of the letters that we received.
Okay, Sam, which shoes?
The blue ones. You look really good, Mom.
So that's Michelle from Alexandria, Virginia. That is a letter that we received saying that her husband wanted a divorce and that she had to go to her son's graduation and go back to work again after having been out of the workplace for a number of years. And what could I do to help her? I ended up actually going to DC and dressing her and her family and her best friend. And that was a real photo from her son's graduation. But we started to get these letters that were about a flight attendant who lost her job and with her last paycheck bought a dress to interview in and to go to her mom's funeral. A woman who was interviewing for her first job right out of college. A judge in LA who sold her home with her 2 toddler sons and her public school teacher husband and ran to be the youngest woman judge in LA Superior Court and wore our dress to run to be the judge and won with 63% of the vote. But it was these unbelievable stories that people wanted to share with us about having the word gravitas sewn into their clothes. And what I realized at the time is we didn't have a fashion company. We really had a confidence company, a company that through our products was giving women this gift of self-confidence. Now, I've spent the last 6 years really thinking about what that means to be self-confident. And what I've learned is it's a choice. If any of you have kids or have been around children, we are born fully self-confident. I have a 6-year-old stepson who actually just called me right before I hopped on the Zoom. I told him I had to work this evening. But children are fully self-confident. Like if you ask my 6-year-old what he's the best at in the world, he'll be like, I'm great at skiing. I'm the best soccer player, right? He's got a long list of things. But at some point in your adolescence, at least for me when I was 12, you start to doubt yourself, right? I remember not even knowing what the word chubby or skinny or pretty or ugly, these are words that I just didn't even understand. And then my parents actually threw me my first birthday party. I think my mom, who ran a Mongolian barbecue at the time, really needed to drive traffic. So the kids ate for free and the parents had to pay. But I remember waking up that morning and thinking, geez, like, do I look good today? And I think it kicks off this lifelong balancing act of being self-conscious versus self-confident. And there are times in life where it's okay to be self-conscious, like my 22-year-old self who wanted to see something good in herself. I used to weigh 300 pounds. Being self-conscious actually spurred me to be healthy and take on actions in my life. But I would say most of the time, 90% of the time, we can choose to be self-confident. We can go back to that place of the inner child. I spend a lot of time with women in dressing rooms, and I actually think the dressing room is the analogy for what I've just described. Every woman I dress, myself included, by the way, comes to the dressing room, comes to a fitting, setting herself up to fail. By the way, I do this. Before I've even asked one question, every woman, doesn't matter who she is, where she is in life, will say to me, I don't like my arms, I don't like my butt, I haven't lost my baby weight, or I'm going to lose 15 pounds. There's like a whole list of negativity and insecurities that I get told before we've even really met each other. And I tell every woman, pause. I'm a dress whisperer. It's my job to fit you, not for you to fit into something. And I really want to let's go back to being 6 years old again. And how exciting was that when someone said you could have a new dress? And we spent 20 minutes really just talking about her life, what she wants to accomplish, what are the things she's amazing at, before I even let her go in and touch a rack of clothes. And what inevitably happens is the woman will come out and she'll be like, oh, this is a skinny mirror. You've totally tricked me. This is a skinny mirror. That's not what I look like. And I always say, actually, that is what you look like. There is no skinny mirror here. This is from Bed Bath & Beyond, this mirror. And, you know, this is you looking at yourself in a positive light. We've changed the chemistry of the room. And I really think that's an analogy for how we take on the day. How many of us wake up in the morning with a long list of things we've got to get done and a ton of doubts and a ton of fears? And if we woke up every morning really reflecting on the things we like about ourselves, the things that we're going to accomplish, the things that we're on our way to doing, how would that change how we take on the day? Because we as a company recognize that fashion plays a role in our lives, but that's really not what we've learned. What we've learned is there's a step before you've even gotten to the fashion part of letting go of the insecurities that haunt us, seeing the best in ourselves, seeing things that we like about ourselves, and acknowledging them, because we can't receive compliments until we can pay ourselves a compliment. I've really learned that when we choose self-confidence, when we choose to believe in our unique, innate gifts, we are able to accomplish so much more. I always say my tagline is self-confidence is the best outfit, so we should all rock it and own it. Now, here's the part where if we were together and not virtually, we would do what I call the superpower exercise. But because we can't be together physically, I'm going to ask you all to play a game with me on social media. I really, we did a couple of years ago, we did a collection. I'm sure some of you remember the Wonder Woman film. So we got to do a collection for Warner Brothers for that film. And the idea is design workwear for Wonder Woman. And by the way, I didn't even know what that meant because I was like, she wears a leotard. I'm not quite sure I know how to make workwear for her. But our team really came up with this idea of Wonder Woman doesn't need an alter ego, that she can tell people what she's great at, and that we can create workwear that she can fight crime in, but also go to work in. And my team got this really interesting conversation about superpowers and can mortals have superpowers? And we decided yes. And now this is really important. A superpower is something that you are the best at in the world. No one is better than you at this. And it's very important to distinguish between what you're good at and what you're the best at. And again, choosing self-confidence means acknowledging to others what you are amazing at, what you are the best at in the world, because you can't choose self-confidence if it doesn't come from something very, very authentic. And so what we usually do in large group settings, like a ballroom or a conference, is I ask people to choose a partner at their table or someone they're sitting next to, and to tell that person what you're the best at in the world. And then have that person tell you what she's the best at in the world. And it's a really fun conversation because, well, one, I think we all struggle to really come up with one that is really, really us. But secondly, once you do, it's this really freeing moment to acknowledge something that probably everyone else has been saying but you about yourself. And what we usually do is we usually call on people to compliment their partner and tell everyone what their partner's superpower is, what they're the best at in the world. And people get embarrassed. But for volunteers, we usually give away gifts. And I think we're actually going to give away something at the end of this virtual event as well. But so we're going to do this exercise on superpowers, but we're going to ask you to do it with your little bigs and littles. So your big sis, your little sis. And on Instagram, post a photo with your big sis or your little sis. And I want you to tell the world what that person is the best at in the world, right? Something that they're great at. And if you tag us, a couple lucky people are actually going to get a whole pack of products from us. So we'd love for you to do that. Make sure you tag us. Make sure you're public if you are going to post and tag, and mention us in the comment and tag. And I'm going to share with all of you how I answer this question. What am I the best at in the world? I have many superpowers, I hope. But the two that I always share is, one, I am the best +1 in the world. please invite me to something. Please take me as your +1 to something. I will fetch your drinks. I will not hover. I will meet other interesting people. I will bring them over to you. I am the best +1 in the world. That is my genuine superpower. And the second superpower I usually share is, it was actually gifted to me by one of our customers. She said, you are a mirror of positivity. Well, actually, she said, you're everybody's skinny mirror, but I've renamed it as the positivity mirror. That is that when we spend time together, I reflect your best qualities back onto you. And I love that. I'm honored to be people's positivity mirror. I hope people feel energized and positive when we interact, hopefully virtually today. But please share the superpower of one of your sisters. Post a photo of the two of you, share your superpower, tag us, and we will be sending out gifts to some of you who post. Now, why does this matter, right? So yeah, I got it, Lisa. Choose self-confidence. It's a choice. Know what I'm the best at. Why do I need to do these things? And why does that create positive benefits in my life, whether it's personal or professional? I always say it's because when crisis happens, when tragedy happens, when bad things and upsets happen, you're going to have to rely on that sense of self, that self-confidence, that superpower to be able to come through. So I want to now talk about, how does your superpower give you the ability to pivot with purpose? Now, some of you remember that in January, we started to get mentions of, actually, Thomas, can we just pause this for a second? Thanks. We started to hear about this coronavirus happening in China. Well, my team, many of my team members, 2/3 of my team actually is based in Qingdao, China, which is in the north of China. 1/3 of our team is based in the United States. And January 21st, my business partner in China called me and said, we will not be shipping spring goods. Now, you can imagine, as a fashion company, oh my gosh, I have no spring goods coming. And she said, we're going to shut down the factories from Chinese New Year, January 21st, until April. So we're going to take a 45 to 70 day pause. And you can imagine how scary that is as an entrepreneur. I know all of you we've all experienced this collective crisis together. And so we kind of knew the end of January something was coming. March 13th, most of us put our pencils down and went home. And what ended up happening over here was, it was really hard to lock the door to this office here and go home. And what I said to my team is, I said, we're going to figure this out. And the reason is, I went back to the superpower exercise. And now, Thomas, let's put this up, which is, when crisis happens, something happens in our brains. If you want to Google this later, go read the great Wikipedia article about the amygdala hijack. And what that means is, in your brain, there are two parts of your brain that really control reaction. One is the amygdala. Every animal in the world has an amygdala. A snake has an amygdala, right? And the idea is, this controls flight, fight, or freeze, right? So you see something and you can fly away, you can fight it, or you can freeze it. And it actually is a very primitive response. There's a part of your brain called the hypothalamus, and that is what controls problem solving and productive thought and constructive thought. By the way, if something bad happens, the amygdala is the first to show up at the party. The hypothalamus takes 10 seconds plus to show up. And this is why your mom used to say, count to 10 if you get angry. It's real. It's actually brain chemistry. Well, so I said to my team, we're all going to pause and we're not going to spiral. Okay. We're not going to go into the amygdala hijack. We're going to let our hypothalamus kick in. And I said, let's not spiral. Let's take stock of what we are the best at. As a company, what are we the best at in the world? And I said to my team, we are not going to profit. We are going to act with purpose. How can we be helpful to our communities right now? And then the second thing we did, and I think this is really the lesson. Have you ever been at a we haven't been to a clothing store in a while, but have you ever been to a store and someone goes, "Can I help you?" And you automatically say, "No, I'm just browsing. No, thank you." So I'm not into the like, how can I help? Because we knew we're the best at. We are the best at making well-fitting clothes. We are the best at producing things. We make things in New York. We make things in China. We make things all over the world. We're the best at that. I said, let's not be about asking how we can help. Let's propose how we can help. And so because we knew what we're the best at, because we knew our superpower, we could say to the world, here's how we can help. And so can we go back to that photo? This is our head designer, Aruk, and I. And by the way, that was supposed to be a shirt in the fall collection, which we obviously did not make yet. But we decided, our friends at the Today Show said that they were still going to Rockefeller Center and they needed 40 face masks. And we decided that we would, on April 3rd, pivot our entire business to making hospital gowns for Mount Sinai Hospital and Lenox Hill, and to making cloth face masks for people in frontline jobs in hospitals, the media, the grocery, delivery, and then eventually our communities. And so when you know your superpower, when you know what you're the best out of the world, you can stop the spiral. You can take stock of what your capabilities are, and you can offer the help versus asking how you can help. And now I want to walk you through, when we talk about pivoting not with profit, but pivoting with purpose, I'm going to walk you through the stages of it. And there are actually 6 stages to pivoting with purpose. The first is, you can't innovate or pivot unless you really understand who you're serving. And by the way, these are muscles that we practice as a company anyway. So I'm going to show you how we've practiced innovating and pivoting in our core business, and I'll show you how we applied it in a crisis situation like COVID. And I think, I've had a ton of girlfriends go through being furloughed, marriages being in a tough place, becoming teachers, homeschool teachers, and we've had long conversations about it. And we've come back to this idea of really celebrating things that we're amazing at, and then figuring out how to repurpose our lives in a way that can make a difference. So this, by the way, is our customer board in our office around who we serve. We really think hard about what's working, what's not working, customers we love. This is actually from my apartment when we launched the company, and we still practice this. In the pandemic, this is who we served. Can we go to the next slide? Oh, sorry. This is an old deck. All right. So during a pandemic, sorry, Thomas, it's all right. We're going to keep going. We serve the front line. And so one of the things that I think is really important about when you serve the front line is thinking quite a bit about the functionality of it. So we'll show you a photo a little bit later about servicing the front line. So we were able to create all of the PPE for the staff at Lenox Hill and at Mount Sinai. The second part about pivoting with purpose is you really have to functionally differentiate. I think if you're going to pivot, it's about creating something truly differentiated. And so here, if you click ahead, this is our patented product. And so what we do with a patent around combining features and benefits to deliver something incredible at value. During the pandemic, what we did is we pivoted our fit and our design skills to create face masks that the Today Show actually tested at Columbia Medical School, and they were as good as an N95. So, those are what we call the first 2 steps of pivoting with purpose. The third is really around emotional differentiation. And so one of the things, hold on one second, we're going to go to these. One of the things, no, sorry, it's the other one. One of the things that we did really effectively was tell an emotional story. And so, it's one thing to create something better. It's another to wrap it with emotionality. I'm going to just pause here real quick and just go Sorry about that. There we go. There we go. Sorry about that, guys. By the way, if I go back, this is who we serve. We serve the front line. This is the front line these are the hospital gowns and the masks that we made for the front line in April of this year. So can we go to the next slide? Just go one more. Functional differentiation. This is kind of when you pivot, doing something that is better than what's out there. So this is kind of an example of how we did it during the pandemic. In terms of the third step, it's around wrapping your pivot with emotional twists. And so it's one thing to do something better. It's another to win the hearts you can win the mind, but winning the heart of an audience and selling something in. So this is for our business, these are kind of the emotional cues of gravitas around powerful women. I love Glamour's 1,000 Ways to Dress 10 Pounds Thinner. Can women really be funny? Body positivity. We serve every woman 0 to 28W, right? This is kind of the emotional. During the pandemic, how we applied that was sisterhood. And I thought this audience would really appreciate the sisterhood concept. So if you, Thomas, can you go to the next slide? If you read anything about what we did during the pandemic, the face masks are actually a partnership with one of my best friends, Jane Park, who is a very well-known entrepreneur. She owns a company called Toki, and they do beautiful Japanese fabric gift wrap, which we produced for her in New York. And at the end of March, I asked her if I could take her beautiful, stunning Japanese cotton, of which she had sent me thousands and thousands of yards to make spring production, and essentially maim her product, let's just cut into her products and make face masks. And she said yes. And she lives in Seattle, I'm in New York, and we have been partners on this for the last 6 months. And I think this is the emotional twist, right? Like, so anybody can make a beautiful face mask, anyone can contribute to their community, but being able to do it with your sister, right? Being able to do it with someone across the country and create meaningful difference in people's lives. I'm really grateful. Jane said, yes, please completely destroy my product and turn them into face masks. And we ended up doing these really fun Sunday chats. And this is, I thought this would be a fun group to share this with. I haven't shared this with others in the past, but this idea of doing it together and creating an emotional twist around it. The next step in terms of pivoting is really around resilience and execution. When Oprah named us one of her favorite things, this is the photo on the left, by the way. What very few people know is that every single product was mislabeled in the entire collection. Everything was one size too small, and the sewers had screwed up the labels, the size labels on the products. So you can imagine selling out in a day. And then what happened next was we realized that everything was mislabeled. And this is one of our designers at the time. We had to go in on a weekend into the warehouse and completely relabel every product, measure every product, inspect it, thousands and thousands of dresses. And this is what I always say to people. It's easy to give up. It's much harder to persevere, as you can imagine, right? That's such a cliche. But this idea of it's never going to be right on the first time, and we just have to keep pressing on. This is a photo. So I live downtown in New York, and our offices are in Midtown. And we didn't close our office. We were designated an essential workplace. I didn't want to take public transport. And so I walked round trip 2 hours every day to and from work so that we could come and create PPE for the front line. And one of the things that I talk a lot about is when you tell people I'm helping in this way, there's this crazy thing that happens in that people raise their hands and come along for the ride. And so I posted this photo on Instagram and on LinkedIn, and I said, you know, this is one of those moments in your life where you realize you have to believe that people can persevere. And I've been walking round trip, you know, to make PPE for the front line. And on LinkedIn, I got these direct messages. And on Instagram, I got these direct messages of like, I have a car. This is actually the former vice president of supply chain at Marc Jacobs, Bonnie, messaged me and said, I haven't seen you in years, but I live in Long Island. My college age kids are driving me crazy because they're home from school. And I would love to drive you to work. And I said, well, I don't need you to drive me to work. I'm okay walking, but I have 200 pounds of fabric in the lobby of my apartment building that I would love help lugging. And she picked me up and literally moved 200 pounds of fabric for me, or with me. Another friend raised her hand and said, if you need any help, I would love to be helpful. And she lives in Coney Island. And I said, that would be amazing. We actually have 2 sewers. By the way, all of our sewers worked from home for 2 months. So they would pick up cut work, go home and drop it back off. And she ended up becoming like a ride share for sewers, my friend in Coney Island. But it's this unbelievable thing that when you have this resilience and you are committed to something with purpose, people will come out of the woodworks to help you. And that's one of my last points, which is when you pivot with purpose, there's kind of an incredible gratitude and humility that comes with it to all the people who come along for the ride. So this is a photo collage. The upper left is me. I was pick and pack associate for the first month. And that was us packing up masks to take to Mount Sinai and Lenox Hill. And what's incredible is so many of members of our community stepped up to donate, to be a part of it. They wanted to contribute. The lower left is actually an amazing customer whose friend, her appendix burst. And she was in the hospital without PPE, and she asked if we could overnight masks for her and her son because she was getting her appendix taken out in the hospital during the middle of COVID. So, there's real gratitude and humility. And one of the things I talk a lot about is when you let people have fingerprints on what you're doing, they're that much more committed to make it a movement. When I started my company, I invited 200 people into my home. 5 people every night to beat up my business, to tell me what wasn't going to work, because I wanted the people closest to me to own the business with me, to feel a sense of ownership. And so the incredible thing is gratitude and humility. When you pivot, when you innovate, there is. And then the last part is remember where you're going. So despite all the challenges, I believe the thing that we all need to hold true is this idea of true north. When I launched my company, or about, I would say 3 months before we launched the company, so this is June, our website failed. And we had to go through an entire redevelopment of it. And I sent the new link to our website to my mom. And by the way, this is a woman, you should never teach her what Google Analytics means, because every morning I see a spike in traffic from Taiwan. She's like, I click on everything, make sure nothing break on your website. And I just one line, Mom, do you like our website? And she said, yes, you will success, Mom. And I love to leave people with this idea of, whatever is happening in your life and however you need to adapt or pivot or innovate, and hopefully you are doing it with purpose and authenticity, you have to remember your true north. And I love that my mom just believes, right? She just believes. And that ultimately ties all the way back to when you choose self-confidence, it creates this virtuous cycle of benefits in your life. Now, I'm going to end this with a story, and I'm going to go back to this idea of inner child. So in addition to telling me your superpower on Instagram, I want you to try something. Does anybody remember, it's hard to ask this question, but some of you may remember the days when we used to go to arcades and carnivals, which hopefully someday we will again. There's this machine, and it is the claw machine, and I call it the money pit. In my 40 plus years on this planet, I have never, ever won at the claw game, okay? And this is just literally, you could basically give it your dollar bills and walk away with nothing. So my 6-year-old, this is December of last year, my 6-year-old says, and he was 5 at the time, and he said, Lisa, I really, really want this emoji stuffed animal in the claw machine. And I was like, I can buy that for you, baby boy, on Amazon. I probably could get it for you for $5, right? He goes, no, I want you to win it. And so I go, we can play anything in this arcade, and that's what you want to play. Okay, so I said, I'm going to do $1 and then we'll go play something else. So I put $1 in. Again, I have never wanted this machine. The claw goes down, it comes up, nothing's in it. Of course, nothing's in it. And he looks at me and he goes, one more. So I was like, okay, one more. Now I'm like $2 in, right? So I put it in, the claw goes down, comes up, nothing. I'm like, honey, I will buy you this emoji toy on the internet, or we can go and like trade in tickets. And he goes, Lisa, I believe in you. Lisa, I believe in you. I'm like, oh, okay. I got to like practice what I preach around self-confidence and belief. $3 goes in. Nothing, right? Obviously, at this point, I'm like, okay, bedtime's in an hour and we got to go home. And he looks at me and he goes, Lisa, you have gravitas. And you can't imagine the look on my face when a 5-year-old says the word gravitas to you. And I go, oh, okay, I believe in myself. I put that last dollar in. And of course, for the first time in my life, the claw goes down and comes up. And there is the emoji toy. And this is Wesley, by the way, clutching this emoji toy. And the reason why I end with this is, look, I can talk about self-confidence, forever. And yet that visual, and Thomas, can you put Wesley back up? That visual says it all, right? So when upsets happen, when there's things that you want in life, you almost need to tap into your inner child to be able to get what you want. And so I want to leave you with that thought of choose self-confidence. Tell the world what your superpower is. The more you tell others, the more they'll give you credit for it. Own it and think about how you practice it. And when all else fails, tap into your inner child. And so with that, I'm going to take a pause and I'm going to turn it back to Amy for Q&A. Thank you for this opportunity to share our story.
Thank you, Lisa. This was fantastic, really fantastic. I did want to mention Jackie Schools, our Alpha Phi International President, left you a little note, and she had to leave early and she was disappointed by that, but she wanted to thank you for discussing women, confidence, and gravitas it takes in the world for each of us to be the most amazing version of ourselves. You exemplify the high ideals we hold dear in Alpha Phi, and we would love your superpowers as a part of our sisterhood. There's always alumni initiation. So keep that in mind. That's from Jackie. One of our,
by the way, we didn't have Alpha Phi at my college. So I said that to Carolyn and Greg earlier. I said, I kind of wish I could have been a sister. So maybe this is the moment. Thank you, Jackie, for that offer.
So one of our attendees asked, what was your initial reaction when your mom told you she started a company? Were you scared by that, excited, both?
Well, I'm going to answer that question in 3 different stages. I think at the time, I was really happy that she was supportive of it, by the way, because I think most parents don't want for you what they experienced, right? I think she sort of like worked really hard for me to go to a good college, for me to get a corporate job, to have financial security. So it was really refreshing, frankly, to know that she was okay that I was going to get off the corporate ladder. So it was relief that she was okay with my napkin. I think what was nice to have someone provide some structure around the napkin who had been there and done that. The second thing is, as I mentioned, she just always believes, right? Every time I doubt myself, and I don't practice my own exercise around self-confidence, I know she will. And those of you who have maybe, if not your mother, there's a female influence in your life that just believes in you. And you're like, how do you believe in me when I just have screwed up or haven't done something, or I don't even know how that's possible. So that's the second thing. And then third is my mom said something to me 3 years ago, and she said, you think I was not 37 years old too? And by the way, I have 2 babies. You have no baby. And she was just so empathetic about making payroll and paying health insurance and, all the things no one tells you about when you become an entrepreneur. And she said, I was where you are and we made it. And that gives me belief that you can make it to the next month. And sometimes that's what it is, by the way, as an entrepreneur. Sometimes you got to say, whew, on the 31st of the month, this month, we did it again. That's amazing. And tomorrow there will be no money in the bank account. We'll have to refill it for the month and then pay it all out again, and sort of like amazing to have someone like my mom who's like, I was there and you can do this. So it was relief. And I continue to be relieved to have someone like that in my life.
That's awesome. So a question from Sarah Benoit was, what was the biggest lesson you learned transitioning from corporate America, Mackenzie, to a self-employed business owner?
There are so many lessons, and I love that question because I'm not older, but one of the things I like to, I'm going to answer your question, I promise, but I'm going to go on a little tangent. I always say this generation's rock stars are like women entrepreneurs, celebrity chefs, and tech geeks, right? These are the people we celebrate in the culture. And the tech geeks and women entrepreneurs always tend to be super young, right? I had worked for 11 years before I decided to leave. And I always tell people it's never too late, because what you have as an entrepreneur is you're solving for resources in terms of money, know-how, that you are the expert on something, and network, that people in the industry that will help you. And if you can solve for 2 out of those 3 things, you should start your own business. But if you can't solve for enough of them, you shouldn't do it, right? You should stay in the comfort of corporate America. And what was nice about having worked for 11 years, so I owe McKinsey so much, is I was financially in a better place, that I didn't have to raise money necessarily right away. I had a network. I knew people in the fashion industry because that was my expertise. And I had know-how, right? And so first, let's start with, I left corporate America to start my own business in an arena where I could succeed. And again, that I think ties back to this idea of don't set yourself up to fail, set yourself up to succeed. Start with the ingredients of your strengths, because as an entrepreneur, you have enough to solve for in terms of failures and mistakes and picking yourself back up, that if you start from a very confident and strong place, you're in a better situation. The things that I missed, but I've let go of, is you don't have a fancy business card. No one knew what Gravitas was. Many of you didn't know what Gravitas was. We're still a niche brand, but it was hard letting go of the status symbol, right? Of the corporate Amex and the fancy business card, and I know this person. It was really hard to let go of that. It was very scary to have no safety net the first month when I got all the bills in. I remember the anxiety you have over the mortgage bill and the credit card bill and all of this. Imagine that multiplied by 10x, and then you have people staring at you. And remember, when I started the company, I started in my apartment. So I had the shortest commute in New York City, right? I'd open my door and everyone had keys to my apartment because it was the office. So I'd walk in and there'd be 6 people waiting to make sure I made payroll and health insurance and all those things. So I would say going from corporate to my own business, I took a lot of strengths with me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done it. And I took a lot of self-belief with me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done it. But what I gave up in exchange for that sense of self and independence was financial security and status. And I'm okay with that, because I realized how unhappy I was chasing the brass ring, right? Like, I don't know if any of you have this, but like, when I lose 15 pounds, I'll be happy. When I get promoted to senior partner, I'll be happy. Well, all those things might or might not have happened, and I'm still not happy. So while I'm the financially poorest I've ever been, I'm the richest I've ever been in terms of how much I like what I do. I wake up every morning really loving what I do. There is no plan B. I always love that dinner party question. If you weren't doing what you're doing, what would you be doing? And I always tell people, for the first time in my life, I'm doing it. So I wish that for all of you, right? And I've let go of a lot of the metrics for success that were gifted to me, whether it's by education or the corporate environment. So that's what the transition was like. I hope I answered your question. And if I haven't, just put it in the chat window and say, please answer it again. Because I can rewind.
Joy Meredith says, if you have it handy, can we see the napkin?
It's going to be in my upcoming book.
You should have it framed back there behind your head.
No, it's not. But this has been propped for your convenience, by the way. We're inside our New York City factory where we cut and sew product. So this has been propped for your benefit.
Well, it's very nice.
If I turned the camera around, you'd see mannequins and rolls of fabric.
Nice. Well, her question is, what characteristics do you look for in partners, employees, and friends?
So it's a very easy litmus test. I spend more time at work than I do with my family. And so I want to be in business with people that share the same values. That photo I showed you of Aruq, how many head designers of a fashion brand would come to work during a pandemic and hand cut 20,000 masks? And that, I think we have photos of somewhere on the internet, on the Instagram or something. He literally used his hands to physically make PPE himself. So I look for people like that who share that sense of selflessness and this belief that we're doing our life's work. And I hate to say this. I'm going to say it. You know what, Amy? I'm just going to say it. I think the pandemic has taught me a lot about the people I want to be on a lifeboat with. And I always say it's really easy to be a good person when times are good. It's really tough to be a good person when times are bad. When your back's up against the wall and you're worried about everything, the people who step up are the ones you want to be around. I have a girlfriend, Mary Beth. She's a Zeta, so she's not an Alpha. But she's
a Palinic sister. Good.
She's a sister. She walked me home from my office to my apartment because she lives near me 3 times a week. Because if I set a stage for you for April and May, New York City was a ghost town. And you see that in the photos, I wore a hiking backpack and a mask. And basically there were a lot of people in need on the streets. And you can imagine they weren't seeing the typical people that they could panhandle from. And it was a very scary environment for 2 months. And I had this girlfriend, Mary Beth, beautiful woman, who walked from her apartment to my office so that from 7 to 8 p.m. I had someone to walk with. I know you guys appreciate that, right? You guys are sisters. You all are sisters. So those are the types of people we ask to join our team, and those are the people I hope to have in my life.
What core values do you attribute your success and your company's success to?
I really believe in, I'm sure some of you might be aware of Adam Grant's book, Give and Take, where he talks about how givers win in the long term, right? So there's takers, matchers, and givers. Very easy to understand those labels. And takers might win now, but they lose long term because people start to label them as takers. And that the people who win long term are givers. So I believe we are a giving culture. I believe that when you give without any expectation of return, it creates a positive wave of benefits. If you've ever been on an email chain with me, I sign every email with gratitude because it's genuine. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be of service to you. So that's the core value of who we are. We are givers by nature.
That's fantastic. So was it hard to convince the money people that shapewear in a dress was a good thing?
So the good news is I didn't raise any money at the beginning. And by the way, anyone who's looking to start their own business, I didn't write a business plan. I wrote a 5-page Word document, and I just did 2-week milestones to hold myself accountable. So I opened a bank account and got a tax ID number. And then 6 weeks later, like, I have a company. I can't look back now. I'm not an NDA person. I believe all of us are walking around with ideas for businesses. Entrepreneurs are the 2% that have the will to execute. And so there's no new idea, right? It's just having the will to go and do it. So I started the company with my own money. And I think that's always a nice route to go if you can. It wasn't a lot of money, but it was my own. And until we had Oprah, I didn't raise any money. I used Oprah magazine as a proof point for success to do a friends and family round amongst my former clients. Like, actually, that's Carolyn Rizzoli, the former president, Marc Jacobs. She invested. My boss that told me I didn't have any gravitas invested. Everybody basically put $50K into the company. And so I didn't have to convince money, guys. We don't have any venture capital. We don't have any institutional money. It's all angels and our own cash flow. So
the Oprah effect, right?
If you can do it that way, I would encourage you. But some people do need to raise money. If you're building a big tech company, you need the capital.
Right.
But we kind of small and mighty.
Yep. So you mentioned earlier a book. Do you have a book? Is there a name of the book? Where can we buy it?
Oh, that's really kind. It's coming out in a year. I think my publisher would be upset if I released it before they did. But what's really fun is we've created it's a quiz. There's a quiz, and you find out what kind of gravitas you have. There are 8 types of gravitas. Oprah has all 8. So it's about figuring out. Of course she does. And you know who else? There's a couple of people we talk about. But it's about figuring out what kind of gravitas you have, because I believe everyone has a form of gravitas. And then how do you build the skills to own all 8? You don't need all 8, but there are situations where you might have to be a different type of gravitas. So I have a lot of customers who are like, I am a giver, I'm smart, but I have a hard time presenting in front of my boss, right? So I always say, let's teach you how to have commanding gravitas. So it's 8 types of gravitas, and how do you get all 8?
That's cool.
But it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be really fun.
Very fun. You're so inspiring.
Amy, I feel like you might have all 8, by the way. Having interacted with you for about 30 minutes before.
So I strive to achieve. That's right. That's right. So I think we're going to move to the free.
We're going to give away stuff.
Yes. Unless anybody has any other chats they want to send or any questions.
Oh, hi, Rebecca, by the way. I'm so glad your daughter and you are texting. All right.
So I'm waiting to hear from Carolyn.
And by the way, we should explain this. In in-person events, who doesn't like feeling like Oprah or Ellen, right? Like, they must really enjoy giving away stuff. And because we're not in person, I don't get to give away anything. And so I told Carolyn and Bridget, we'll give away 2 $500 gift cards. Spend it on whatever you want on our site. So, I always say it's important to show up. It's important to raise your hand. So I believe that the attendees on this Zoom get a chance to enjoy some gravitas in life. So it's 2 $500.
Where do we buy gravitas?
It's gravitasnewyork.com, GRAVITAS, and New York is spelled out. Or you can just Google Gravitas New York and it'll pop up.
Cool.
But we're giving away 2 $500 gift cards.
Okay.
And I will help you figure out how to spend it if you want.
Woo! Okay, so I'm getting the results from Carolyn on our first winner, and that is going to be awarded to Joy Meredith. Congratulations, Joy.
Hi, Joy.
And coming in with our second gift certificate, Carrie Poole. Thank
Congrats,
you,
Carrie.
Joy and Carrie, for coming on our call and participating with us. Lots of fun, lots of great information too. You're truly inspiring.
Thank you, Amy. That means a lot coming from you, and
I think
it's
we're
an
going to
honor.
wrap up for the evening. Thank you, Lisa. Really, we appreciate you giving your time to us tonight and sharing your insights and your knowledge with us. I also want to shout out a special thanks to our generous support of the Alpha Phi Foundation donors for making all of these programs possible for us. And finally, thank you to all of you for joining us. And the next Keynote Speakers event will take place on November 18th at 6:30. And so for more information, you can find that at alphaphi.org and join the Alpha Phi Network. Thanks so much and have a great evening. Thanks, Lisa.